to Empire Builders Masterclass.com. This is our live stream for the week. The cast, if you guys are listening to us on the podcast, welcome. Thank you. Make sure you subscribe, do all the things. You may notice that my co-host today is not Honorée Corder. It is the one and only Karen Anderson. Karen, how are you?
I'm doing great and so excited to be here, to be with you. Like,
Yes.
after talking books, like nothing makes me happier.
Yeah. Talking books, talking courses about books,
Yeah.
talking all this stuff. Karen is a mutual friend. She was introduced to me by Honorée. She is one of the instructors at the Empire Builders Masterclass. She is awesome. She's done amazing things. I put a little blip of your bio in the show notes, but I want to give you an opportunity to kind of tell people who you are and what you're up to and where you've been and all those good things. So you want to give them a quick intro into Karen?
Sure. I mean, well, you can tell my hair is a little, like, I'm not young anymore. And so it usually takes a while for me to say what I've done. But I love the book world, the course world. I love helping people learn and understand and grow and change and do and all those things. And a lot of it comes down to communication, how well people communicate. And so it's a little bit of an odd background, but my first career, I was a marriage and family therapist. And I listened to people. I was in a modality that wasn't just listening, but it was really helping people take action and to figure out what their problem was and to make the steps, take the change, make the changes to get to where they wanted to be. And I loved doing that. But in the late 90s, 89, I got introduced to a man named Jay Abraham. And Jay Abraham is an incredible marketer. He's like mentor to Damon John and Tony Robbins and all those guys. And I trained with Jay in 89 in direct response marketing. And I fell in love because really similar to what I had done, which was helping people define their problems and coming up with solutions. And marketing is really about helping people to realize, that if they've got a problem, you get a solution and helping them figure that out and communicate with them. And so I got into copywriting and editing. That was kind of my first deal. In those days, which are many years ago, we were doing a lot of direct mail, and direct mail is really expensive. If you're putting that kind of money in the mail, your message has to be clear and concise and compelling, clear, concise, and compelling, which is about everything. And so I found that I loved copy editing and I loved copywriting and I loved helping people to figure it out. And again, given ethics, like, yes, you can compel people to do bad things, but we want to help people to do things that are good for them. And so I really loved it. And then I guess it was mid 90s, a dear friend of mine was in the publishing world and he was like, I got some people that have great messages, but they don't know how to write. So could you do some books? And I went, sure. He's like, so I co-authored some books. And then I self-published my first book and really loved the process and realized that at that time in particular, it was very expensive. But in order to self-publish, you needed to learn to publish. And so that was a really important thing. I actually learned it in a very expensive way and learned to publish. And then I got picked up by a national house. And so then I flipped over and did the working for a traditional, being an author for a traditional house. And so I did that. And then after that, I worked for a traditional publisher for a really, really long time. And then I took a little time out to do some to do some caregiving. You get to a certain age and somebody has to do it. So I took care of some people. And then really the last part is, I guess, since about 14 or 15, I started ghostwriting. And then I did a couple fun books. I worked with Ryan Levesque on his book Ask, which is a marketing book, which I love doing because I love marketing. And then I found Morgan James Publishing and ended up working with Morgan James. I've been with them for about 8 years. For people that really kind of want a hybrid model, like they want all the benefits of traditional, but they actually don't want to do the learning. That's why I send people to Honorée that really want to learn it because she is the best there is.
Right.
But people who want to, really don't want to go that route, but really want to get some of the benefits of production and distribution, I do that. And then I've been ghostwriting. So I ghost wrote a book for Beth and Jeff McCord called Becoming Us, which is an Enneagram and marriage book. Nice. And then I had the privilege of writing my husband's book, and we're still married. Called, called the Bezos Letters: 14 Principles to Grow Your Business Like Amazon. And
Okay, that's where that's from. Okay,
came from. Yeah.
gotcha.
And so Steve had an idea for a book, which was a great idea. And I was like, okay, you work with a ghostwriter, you do it. Like, I want to stay married, so you do your thing. And then, being the shy, retiring person that I am, I saw it and was just like, oh my gosh, this is going to make me crazy. Just let me write this. And so I took it all back, and he was really gracious about it. He was incredibly gracious because, it's not his world. And so he let me do my
Mhm.
thing. And we ended up, the book is, that's great. It hit Wall Street Journal, USA Today. We're in 19 languages. It's doing really well.
Wow.
And then
So
how I got introduced to Honore, which was you, was I really love the world of publishing and any way that people can learn to get their message out and do it well. And so I ended up meeting Honore and loved what she was doing. And I was like, I'm always, I've been in a little different universe, but
Mhm.
I can always learn. So I love Honore and what she teaches, because she really helps people to understand what they need to do. And so
Right.
then, as the course world has built over the years, again, one of the things that I love about I call my partner and I have a course called Unleash the Power of Your Book. I love the concept of unleashing the power of your book, because it's really it's important to do that. But what happens is that you can only say so much in 200 pages in a
That's right.
40,000 word book. Like, it's awesome because you have that person's attention. You can be really clear. You can be really concise. Um, but you can only do as much as you can do in 200 pages. So I really love, and I love what you're doing, and I support you so much, because the idea of helping people to kind of take that next step and create courses out of their material is it's natural because of two things. One is people learn in different ways, and some people, they want the visual, they want the audio, they want to learn that way. But the other thing is you get time to teach and
Mhm.
share and communicate and get it on a different level. So I love both sides of that. I love the book is going to be your cheapest way to get
Mhm.
in front of somebody's willing to take a $20 risk to be able to know your material. But then at that point in time, if they love it, and I say this all the time, um, is that that if you give a reader everything that they need to do it themselves, and you really don't hold back, then they're going to go, well, I want more, or don't want to do it by myself, or what else do you have, or can you help? And it just leads into other things that you have to offer. I drink decaf. Lucas.
All three of those words were good words though for the
I
conversation.
drink decaf. So
Well, that's the problem. You need good coffee. We
I
need to
know,
get
I
some
know.
caffeine
Well,
in you
anyway,
on that way out.
I love this whole space because
Mhm.
and I love working with authors because people have compelling messages, and and I love for it's finding that right person and helping them hear your message. I don't think there's anything better.
Yeah, no, it is an amazing way to reach people through, and I do love the dependency of the course on the book to kind of invert the relationship just a little bit because, like you, I 100% agree. Like the book is like the initial upfront low risk investment in learning somebody through their work. That's how I met Honore, was through reading You Must Write a Book. And it just appeared to me through her book that because she doesn't hide her personality in her writing, which
Right.
some nonfiction authors do. And she does the exact opposite of that. She's very much present in her writing. I was immediately like impressed by the way she handled the material. She kept things simple, and that her personality came through it, very optimistic, upbeat, that kind of thing. So that was like a gateway for me getting to her course, which was the next step. And that's a good example of exactly what you're talking about, how you've got that really firm, well established, and the reader's in control of that relationship, which is a really cool thing for people that are maybe a little hesitant to step into the water quickly with a coach or a consultant. If you can,
Sure.
access them a bit through their book at your pace, at your time, and when you're ready, that's a really powerful thing. So I do want to talk about what you and Margie have built over at Unleash the Power of Your Book. But before I do that, I got to say hi to Phil because this is a live show.
Oh, good.
And there's Phil. I don't you haven't met Phil yet, but Phil's amazing. Phil, thanks for tuning in. All right. Be sure to drop any questions you have for Karen, Phil, if you have any. Anyone else that's watching, don't forget to go ahead and enter your questions in the chat or comment. We want it to be interactive. We're going to have a little bit of Q&A at the end if you guys have some stuff in the feed. And so we'd love to hear from you guys. Okay. So as far as the course goes, it's called Unleash the Power of Your Book. And you and your business partner, Margie, you guys created this. You guys co-teach it.
We do.
And you host it. And I love that you guys concentrated on distinct modules of learning, particularly with such a large world of work. I mean, there is a lot of information in this course. And I love the way you guys broke it out into the modules you did, starting with a strategic reset. Can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of a strategic reset and like what exactly that means?
Sure. But I need to give you a context first.
Okay. I love context.
Thank you. So, because it'll make sense, and remind me if I forget, because sometimes I talk and forget. So, so Margie, my business partner, Margie and I have known each other 30 years. We met through Jay Abraham. Oh, it's probably 35, 39. It's been a long time ago. And Margie was president of Regnery Publishing for like 20 years. So, you know, we've both been in the book business doing kind of different things, but both been in the book business together. Margie's got, you know, like major chops. Like I think that when she was in her tenure as president of Regnery, I think they put 85 books on the New York Times list.
Wow.
14 debuted at #1. And so she's really good at what she does. And she took a kind of an early retirement and is kind of now doing her own thing. And so Margie and I were good friends. We got together. And one of the things that really frustrated us, and we saw it really often, was that authors would, you know, they'd launch their books. They do everything to get their book out there. And then they'd go, well, now what do I do? Like the book would get there, they'd get all the excitement, the book would launch, it hit pub date, and then there'd be like this, you know, like this disappointment. And in our careers, like very rarely have we seen an author who out the gate was thrilled with the success of their book, like everything worked. A lot of authors are disappointed because it hasn't done, you know, what they had hoped it would do. And Margie and I felt like that was really a tragedy because people worked really hard on their books. And so the idea that in doing our course was really to look at people who, and the principles are the same, but it's really for people who've launched a book and then they don't know quite where to go from there. So the idea is that you can relaunch your book successfully, and that the pub date is different than kind of launching your book, because it's an artificial date. I mean, the pub date in publisher terms is the date that book releases to the general public. And so it's all about that book release date. But then you can create reasons to relaunch your book. You know, it could be National Create Your Own Course Day. I mean, you can do something to be able to say, oh, I'm going to drive people to this message, and you can successfully relaunch the book. And there are lots of ways that do that. And the other thing that we really looked at was the idea of how do you leverage your book? You've invested all of your time and energy into getting your book out there. And I often say this, is that it's typically you make more money off of your book than from your book. Meaning the idea of royalties and book sales are amazing. I love getting royalty checks. I mean, that I got one this morning. It's a really good feeling to wake up and you get a check and you go, yay, that was amazing.
That's right.
But the reality is that you're going to make more money off of your book. And Honoré is also the best at doing this, but really helping people to figure out how to leverage their book and their message so that they keep the momentum and keep that book going. Because that's, I think, what's really hard is you get your book out there and then you go, okay, like what do I do? So idea of strategic reset and I remembered, yay. The idea of strategic reset is really to help people to take a step back and go, okay, this is what I've done so far. Now, what can I do that can be creative? Now, what can I do to build upon my platforms? And like, for example, you've got people that have endorsed your book, and I say this all the time. Endorsements and forwards are and testimonials really are all about borrowed trust.
Mhm.
And so you're taking somebody's name that they recognize, they know their name or their brand, and they recognize, they know, and you have that borrowed trust. But just because they put their name in your book once doesn't mean that they can't be a resource for you later. I mean, it
Right.
could be promoting at another time, not just your launch. They could promote. You could do, again, if you're doing a course, you could take those people that you've done your that have supported your book, and they can come back behind them and support your course. Like it's not basically it's not forgetting. It's not forgetting about what you've done, because most people by nature are always want to do the next new thing. And so there's a whole lot to be said for leveraging what you've done and who you know, so that you really can maximize your impact. And I believe, and this is me personally, my bottom line goal is impact. It's not sales, it's impact. You want to have your message have impact. So if you are the one that goes, okay, well, like I'm tired or whatever, then the bottom falls out. And again, and I work on the publishing side, and I often say to people, as a publisher, we can get your book on a bookstore shelf, but the author always has to get the book off the bookstore shelf. Like you
Mhm.
have to drive the traffic. You have to, and if you go, okay, I put it out there and nothing happened, then that's an awful feeling. And like I said, Margie and I both know, and we both know from experience, you launch your book and then you go, okay, where do I go next? So we really wanted to be that cheerleader and encouragement and champion for an author to go, it's okay. We want a book to have to have legs and to have a long life.
Right.
And that's the goal, because then you're just going to keep broadening your reach and broadening your impact. Do you want me to stop talking, because I can keep
That's
talking?
that's great. You actually, queued a couple of questions in my brain while you were talking about that. One, difference between a publication date and a launch date. So just a very important distinction. Like you have a publication date, that's the day you publish the book and release it to the world. And when you do a future launch of the book, it doesn't necessarily have to coincide with the initial publication date. And if you relaunch your book later, it doesn't necessarily have to be a revision or an update to the published files of your book. You can just have
Yeah, absolutely.
a new media launch of the same product.
And in terms of mindset, I think Honor and I both say this. The idea is you relaunch your book every day.
Mm.
Every day is a new day. And so you think about, who needs to know about my book, or who needs to be telling somebody about my book,
Mm.
or, like you're always in a relaunch mode. It's not a fixed date. That's the one thing I want to say. It's not a fixed date and time that you go, this is when my book came out. It's like it's a continuity. You're always doing it. And then one of the things that Margie's incredibly brilliant at, and 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 I have an opinion on it too, is that the whole role of traditional media right now, so many authors that I hear all day long, every day, they're just like, okay, what I need to do to get on social media. Like, great. It's a noisy, busy space. And do you need to do it? Yeah, probably. But there is a role for looking at what's happening in the news, and
Mhm.
always connecting your book to something that's noteworthy or newsworthy. And Margie's really brilliant at doing that, because I think sometimes people forget. And we have a friend, Mary O'Donohue, and she's a media coach, and she's amazing. And she's like, Mary says, I'm reminding people all the time, the news media, they're looking for stories. They want connections. They want experts. They want people they want people. So the idea of looking for a hook for a news hook, or like something that's current that you can be talking about, like if X happened, then your book is the Y.
Right.
And so I think that that's really important, particularly that mindset of a strategic reset, which is to say, okay, I'm going to step back. I'm going to become aware, like start, like, I just did this. this is funny now that we're talking about it. So I'm helping an author right now who's a sleep doctor, and he's doing a great sleep book. It was, and he wouldn't mind me saying this, it was a teeny bit boring, and so we've been beefing it up. He was bless his heart. He was writing like patient notes, like so and so presented with like so we're making it more bless his heart. We're making it more readable. But one of the things that I did, and this is an old direct response marketing technique, is I was in line at the grocery store a couple days ago, and I always look at the tabloids. You always look at the tabloids.
Wait.
Tabloids, they spend a lot of time and a lot of money being able to communicate with people and getting people to buy their magazine. So if you look at headlines and what they're doing, they're every week, they're in front of people. And so it's a great way to do market research. What are people buying? If you look at those magazine covers, like you just look at the magazine cover, you will see what are resonating with people, like what they're promoting. So there was a little booklet that they had, and I can't remember, I've got it in the other room, but it was a little booklet on sleeping over 50. Like if you're challenged with sleep issues over 50. Well, guess what that told me? A, it told me there's a market. B, there's a target market. And C, that publication spent a lot of money and put a lot of effort into this little booklet. So I bought the booklet and really reviewed it as kind of market research for looking at what people are interested in. Went back to the sleep doc and said, oh, you know what? You really are the authority on sleeping. And so let's talk about some of these concepts and give people more. So it's really an opportunity. And then when and again, because sleep is such an interesting subject, I'm also clipping for him all the time sleep articles. And I'm saying, oh, what are they asking? And the news media is crazy about the idea. So the whole concept is really looking at always being aware of what's out there, what's working. And if you see things happening over and over and over again, then, they call it copy for a reason. So replicate it, use it, and then link to it in your social media or in your news media pitches or all the things you're doing, and let people know that there's some way that that you've got more and they can connect with your book.
Gotcha. So you're touching on some real creative ways to kind of find inspiration and routes for marketing your material. And I love that because I was just having a conversation yesterday with somebody where I said, I think that sometimes being creative means focusing on the things that are right in front of you, right? Like we tend to start thinking on the fringe, thinking that it has to be challenging, when in reality, sometimes the creative thinking is not looking on the fringe and looking directly in front of you, like in the grocery store, right? Something that's working, tried and true.
Yeah.
And just reaching those people with a similar message, kind of helps you move your stuff. Now, when I first published, when I first published Monetize Your Book with a Course, this is the problem with me having all of these great books on my desk while I'm sitting here. Excuse me. I had to alleviate the concern that I was really focusing on a particular niche, right? It's like straight up into nonfiction authors as a business that served other people. But I also understood that the riches are in the niches, right? As some people say, and that being niche down is really nice for clear messaging. I think one of the things that a lot of authors struggle with is figuring out how to develop a clear message to target a specific audience. It's not so much about like leveraging a particular media platform like social media or magazines or whatever, but about making the message right. You were a copywriter, and so you've had some experience with that. So
do you mind if I comment?
Yeah, no, I would love to. Yeah.
So when I've been speaking recently, and one of the things that I tell people when I'm speaking is I think there are three questions that I think are really important to ask, which is, what's the problem you solve?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want the reader to feel? And what do you want the reader to do? And so I think whether it's a course that you're promoting or a book that you're promoting or your message, particularly in the nonfiction world. And sorry, let me say this before I say that for all the fiction people out there. I read fiction every day. Every day I read fiction because story is so important.
Right.
I live in the nonfiction world and I publish in the nonfiction and I write in the nonfiction world. I read fiction every day. And like one of the things that I would say, if you are in the nonfiction space, make sure you're reading fiction. Like
Right.
absolutely, because story is so important.
I love that.
And so that said, when no matter what, whether you're copywriting, promoting your book, talking about your book, whatever, in the nonfiction world, what problem do you solve? You need to know what problem you solve.
Hmm.
And then that whole idea of feeling, that's why story is so important. Like people feel from stories. If they didn't feel from stories, they would buy textbooks more often. Like,
Hmm.
you buy textbooks because you're told you have to buy them and they're full of, I mean, it used to be in the old days, and you've got the information. But what compels somebody to take action is emotion and story. So you really have to have that balance. And if you can get them engaged with you, but you don't know what you want them to do, then you're losing an opportunity.
Right.
And so that whole having a call to action at the back of your book or at the back of your course, like, I always, say at the end of the book, the reader gets to the end of the book, you really don't want them to go, well, that was interesting. You want them to do something. What do
Right.
you want them to do? And you got to be clear. So even if you're doing a media interview or you're doing a social media post, if you know what the problem is that you solve and how you want somebody to feel and what you want somebody to do, having clarity about those three things, I think makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I build that into my curriculum development cycle as well. Because basically, in a course, everything you teach has to have a purpose.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it could be a distraction from something you're actually trying to get the person to learn. As a nonfiction and fiction writer, that's fun to sometimes juggle with people moving from fiction to nonfiction writing,
Yeah.
because in fiction you have the liberty of unpacking the world, and in nonfiction it's a little bit more focused. And then when you move to courses based on nonfiction, it's very focused. And then everything else that's not part of that focused, objective driven type of creation is an additional resource that you would want to separate so that you don't distract from the main topics, the main objectives, because ultimately you're trying to help people achieve objectives so they can achieve outcomes. And
Right.
anything that gets in the way of achieving that outcome is basically interference for a course. So I love that you bring that up, because that jives specifically with what we do in the course development world as well. Um, so module 4 of your course focuses on something called the book leverage pyramid, and that is trademarked, by the way. Um, I don't know. How do you say that when you say a trademark? TM.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yes.
this is an extraordinary new paradigm, the book leverage pyramid.
Yeah.
You start with book sales and related book revenue, some of which even the most experienced authors overlook. But that's just the beginning of this buffet of opportunities. You'll also learn how to leverage your content, expertise, and experience into speaking opportunities, courses, coaching, events, summits, memberships, masterminds. So this is where you're taking your book and you're leveraging it into different revenue streams, right? Different products in your business. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys approach that in module 4?
Sure. Love to. Well, again, Margie and I have been doing this a long time. Um, and like probably my least favorite word in the whole world is balance, because like I'm not a great balance person. Um,
So it's your least favorite because it's the hardest to achieve?
yes, it's the hardest thing for me to do. But I think what happens is like part of the reason we built this book leverage pyramid is for people to see that their book is the foundation, and
Mhm.
you kind of go up and down it. So like Honoree's great. Like one of the things, she's involved in Rotary. Like
Mhm.
that's a great place to begin to polish your speaking opportunities. But you can do so many things simultaneously. But the idea is really to think of your book as the foundation. And so if your book is the foundation, you want a broad foundation. You want to have as many book sales as you want, because that makes it all. I mean, that's your foundation. But from there, you can keep adding levels to your book. So it's not in a linear. So I do this in writing too, and I just have to say this is kind of like the way I look at things.
Mhm.
I can't write in anymore in Word or a Google Doc because it's too linear. Like
Mhm.
start with chapter one, and then you and so I'm a Scrivener fanatic. There are other writing programs out there, but I tell people the thing about Scrivener that I like is it's sort of like, and I know you're a PC guy, so I don't know if this works for you, but like
I
an
do like I do like Scrivener.
Okay, in
Yeah.
iPhotos, if you've done iPhotos before, and I'm kind hard to believe I'm a Mac person. If you're doing iPhotos, what you do is you have a picture and you create an album and you put it in the album, and then you take another picture and you put it in another album and another picture and another album. And with Scrivener, it gives you fluidity. So you can say, "Oh, I'm going to write this in chapter 7," and then you go, actually, that needs to be chapter 1. We need to start book, and just click and move it. So it's not
Mhm.
a linear process. And I feel the same way about leveraging your book. It's not a linear process. You don't like do this, then do this, then do this to make it happen. But you have this opportunity, if your book is your foundation, to build that those different kinds of things. And so for some people, like my husband, he's a great speaker. That's his focus. He wants to be a speaker. I'm like, why don't you do some of these other things? He's like, oh, I didn't think about that. So it's really just giving
Mhm.
people a visual to help them see. And then within each of the levels of the pyramid, there are multiple things that you can do. One of the things we have, and I'll do a shout out for this because in the course bonuses, I have a friend named Bob Serling, and we give away a thing on licensing. There are a lot of people that don't know how to do licensing, and Bob's the best. So he gave us,
Mhm.
this thing on how to understand licensing for your intellectual property. Like unbelievably brilliant.
Wow.
And so you go, okay, that may not be of something that I thought about, but that's how you leverage your book. You take your IP and you repackage it and you do it differently, and you do white papers and you do yeah, oh no, white labeling. I knew I didn't say the right word. Yeah, white labeling. And there's so many other things that you can do to leverage your book. And if you think it's just like, oh, I just have to do the book, or I just have to do, this next, there's such a big world out there that people can get excited about in terms of leveraging their book
Hmm.
and their efforts that they put into it.
We have a good comment here from Phil about Scrivener. He feels the same way regarding Scrivener. For his sales coaching subject matter, he really likes building modules that will become chapters, especially the ability to continue to easily reorder them until it is optimal. I'm a big fan of
Thanks,
doing
Phil.
this name. Yeah. I love your point about writing in a linear document, because I've done both and I can do both and I'm comfortable in both, but I can see the utility of one for the other depending on personality. I'm a systems engineer by
I love
like
that.
by trade, right? So like all the people I worked with were like logical, linear thinkers. Like everything was like we broke down logic trees all day and all this stuff. It was like cause and effect everywhere, right? So for some of those types of linear thinkers, like the chaos of having things in different places or overshadows the simplicity of it for them, and they can't see how that moving this here and there actually creates a linear relationship.
It
It's
does. I
actually
was just going to say
yeah,
that. It's sort of like you just have to step back a little
yep,
bit, and then you go, oh, that
yeah.
makes sense. And so I love the opportunity with a manuscript to kind of move things around. And
Yep.
I've gotten, so again, I use it like Phil was talking about sales. You can use it for so many different things. So even if you say, oh, I'm going to put these do these social media posts, instead of putting them in a Word doc or a Google Doc, if you put them into Scrivener, you can go, oh, I was going to do this on Wednesday, but maybe I should do this on Monday, and you just click and move it. And so it just gives you some freedom, which I like. And
Yeah.
because my experience, because I think I've written, I don't know, 17 some books. I mean, I've written a lot of books, and they typically don't end up the way they start,
Yeah. Yeah.
at least
Yeah.
in my world.
Yeah, actually, when I wrote Monetize Your Book with a Course, Karen Hunsanger,
Mhm.
and I were working on the order, and I love Karen because
Yeah.
she gets me and she knows exactly what I need to hear when I need to hear it. And so like I'm like, Karen, I think I might have this chapter order a little. And she's like, no, I completely agree. You need to move that. Oh, and by the way, you need to do something with chapter 2. It's too long.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I love you. Here comes another chapter. We're just whipping another one out right there.
Well, and here's the other thing, and this is also super valuable from my perspective. When you're writing your book
Mhm.
and if you do it in Scrivener, one of the things, no matter where you do it, one of the things you're going to do is you're going to have content that you don't use.
Yep.
And so then I usually have a folder that I create that I go, oh, for something else. It's called for something else. And I take that material. So there's nothing lost. You put it in there and then you create a bonus, or you create your next book, or you create another document, or you create whatever. But you take, you've got your big picture. And then as you whittle it down, I know we're into a different subject matter, but when you whittle it down, because I can talk about all this all the day. When you get it down, you have this leftover stuff that are gems, and then you go, oh man, I really wish I could have put that in the book. Well, use it for something else, repurpose that, and then because people will want more. And
Right.
so you can use it as a lead gen, you can use it as a bonus, you can free bonus for your launch. You can do all sorts of things with it.
I love that. I don't
So
know if you can hear the wind here. It's pretty
mm-mm.
intense. So the fun part about working on these shows with people in Nashville, because Karen, you and
Yeah.
Honore both live in Nashville, is that you get the weather we get here in Virginia a day before. So yesterday when I'm talking to Honore, she's like, "Hey, dude, if I
Yeah.
lose connectivity, it's because of this crazy weather." And then the next day it'll be me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, that does happen.
we're having all kinds of fun outside right now. Okay, so Phil, I like that unused content folder concept. I do something similar to that as well. I just keep a separate document that's like a dumping ground for things. You'd be shocked by how many times a book idea comes out of that pile because it
Mhm.
didn't fit just as neatly in this book as I needed it to. And I move it over to another document and I'm like, oh, look at that. We've got ourselves another book. So that never occurred. Yep. Okay. So look at that. Immediate return on your investment for listening, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay. So Karen, talk to us a little bit about turning readers into customers, because module 5 of your course talks about fully leveraging all the time, money, and effort that you've invested in the book to turn readers into customers. And so you guys talk about simple yet remarkably important steps that you can take to capture your target market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. This is like, to me, this is the trying to think of how to say this. You want people to get your message, but you really want them to. Okay, I know how to say this. The thing that's most important to me in terms of readers, if you have a back end, is to build a relationship.
Right.
You got to have a relationship with somebody. Your book and your course they'll have that relationship. But then if somebody has a relationship with you, then they trust you. And then you have other things that you can offer. And so everybody hypes on getting the email address. And I know many authors that either don't think about getting an email address, or they don't think about what to do with it once they've got it.
Right.
And the idea is not to blast people, but it's to build a relationship with people. It's all
Yep.
about building a relationship. And then the more and more they trust you, the more they'll want what you have to offer, and then they can become customers. And
Right.
the idea to me is that you always have to build the relationship first, and then they become customers. Like, so it's not about getting customers, it's about building relationships with people that want more from you. And so
Right.
that idea is really looking at, what can you do to get your email list? And this is not rocket science. This is, marketing 101, but you
Mhm.
give value. And some people get really focused on, well, what can I sell them? When it really is about, how can I give them value so that they'll want what I have to offer? And so
Right.
part of what we do is really help people to realize, oh, you got to have an end game. So if you don't have it, like you've got your book done and you don't have anything to sell them, that might be a good first step.
Right.
So that you go, okay, what's my next step? And it very often is a course,
Mhm.
because people go, oh yes, I've just spent $20 on Lucas's book. Now I'm willing to spend X on his course. And his course was amazing. Maybe he would be willing to consult with me personally. Maybe he has a group coaching program I could be on. Maybe whatever. And then he becomes, that person, not he, that person becomes a customer. And then, again, another old direct response marketing talks about lifetime value.
Mhm.
And if people don't understand that their customer has lifetime value, then I think they're missing an opportunity. So say, for example, if I look at somebody's spent, $1,000 on a course, whatever, they spent $1,000 on a course. That's great. And if they also they spend, $15,000 on a mastermind, and then um, they've done 3 years of the mastermind. I'm not a math person. Is that $45,000?
we're we're good.
I'm not going into the math territory. But anyway, lifetime value is that cumulative that the person has spent with you over time. And so as you're really looking at what's the end game, then you can really look at how you're investing your marketing dollars and your
Mhm.
energy and your time, because I would rather have people that are committed to, staying with me for the long haul than somebody who's just a one-off and then they go. I really want that relationship. And so, Honoree is great. Most people that I know don't buy just one of Honoree's books. Like,
Right.
like they don't. They buy her books or courses or whatever. And if she knows how to say, okay, I can look at how I'm investing my time and resources because I know that lifetime value of that person and what it means to me. And I think that the value in a course is really often solidifying that relationship because they get to see you as the teacher, the authority, that have the credibility or whatever. They get to have that relationship with you visually and see what you have to learn. And then they're going to want more. And so it's
Mhm.
really all about taking that reader. But the very first thing you have to do is to get them off the page and onto your list. You have to be
Right.
able to communicate with that person. And so that's why you need a call to action at the back of your book so that you can either give them something free or give them, direct them someplace or give them something to do where they're willing to give you their email address so
Mhm.
you can build that relationship with them. And if you get to the end of your book and it's like that, those are the words I hate, the end. Like it's not the end. You want it to be the beginning. You really want it to be the beginning of a relationship. So it's really
Right.
all about taking that reader and turning them into customers by giving them value.
Yeah, I love that. And for those people that are building a list, or you've already experienced this, but for people that are new to building their list, because maybe like Karen said, yeah, you just hadn't really considered the importance of building your list early in your book's lifetime, and now you're shifting to collecting emails so you can regularly provide that value to people. Don't be shocked if you don't get responses, or if you get a email, people unsubscribe or whatever. That's their way of showing you that, without being pushy or without having to be confrontational, that just now is not the right time for whether that, because specifically like in my world, and it's hard for me to convince some course creators of this, because normally courses are tied to another thing.
Mhm.
Like my course is about creating courses for nonfiction authors, but most of their courses are about something that they've specialized in for years and they're very personally invested in. And when someone says that's not important to me right now, sometimes they get their feelings hurt. And I'm like, no, this is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
And let me kind of segue that in a
uh
different concept. It is I feel the same way about Amazon reviews. Now I can
right.
talk about Amazon reviews for more time than we have. Um, but one of the things about Amazon reviews is, again, I just had I saw somebody do that. She got her first 1-star review, and she was like, "Yay!" And you
Yes.
want to go. That's when you celebrate because all the time you're like, you do not want 5-star reviews from everybody. Like you go, oh, is the goal having all 5-star reviews? Absolutely not, because then the person sort of psychologically, subconsciously goes, if it's all 5-star reviews, it's probably their mother, their brother, their aunt, their uncle, their cousins, and the people that live down the street. Like it's like it doesn't feel right. If you have that tier where you get mostly 5, mostly 4, 3, 2, and you get that 1-star review, then you feel like, oh, I've made it. Like I've gotten so that I'm outside of that audience that loves me because they know me, and people are and so and you learn, at least I did, because yes, of course you take them personally. And my advice is always never feed the trolls. Like that is not the way
Yeah.
to engage with people. Do not feed the trolls. You want trolls, but kind of, but you don't feed them.
Yeah.
But we wrote a book on growing your business like Amazon, and somebody wrote a 1-star review for us because we hadn't actually interviewed Jeff Bezos. Like Okay. Like, sorry. I mean, we tried to make an appointment with Jeff, but for some reason we weren't on his radar. Um, and the book is really, it's Steve's analysis. It's all about Steve's looking at the risk that Bezos took over the years and how he grew Amazon and the principles that that we extracted from that. But we got a review that wasn't about our book. It was about somebody that was like, well, you didn't interview Bezos. Well, that didn't. So you got you learn to take with a grain of salt. And it's the same thing with unsubscribes. Like if the person unsubscribed, don't take it personally because they may resubscribe.
Yeah.
Like you don't know, the timing may
don't
not
know.
be right for them. So
Yep.
it's really looking at how you view, how people are responding to you. So, my goal with reviews is because I look at reviews, everybody looks at reviews. You look at reviews, you want the majority of people to be supportive of your, of your book. And then the outliers, honestly, people will respond to the outliers better than you will.
Yeah, I was on Twitter of all places, in the horror writers community. It's pretty active
I'm
with
not there often.
yeah, it's pretty active for some of the Twitter accounts in that field. And there was a situation where someone not part of that group, but someone in the community had responded pretty poorly and publicly to a negative review of their book. And it just blew up because this author was so egregiously well, they were so upset about the review, and then they were so vocal about it. And it was like, I'm not going to misquote, so I won't say who said it because I probably picked the wrong person, but someone very wise said, those reviews aren't for you, they're for the other readers. And so, like, it's not your job to respond to them. In
No,
fact,
it's not.
do not respond to them. And I was like, that's a pretty good way to put it. Like, they're
Yeah,
not for you, they're for the readers. So leave it
right.
alone.
And that's why I say don't
Yeah.
feed the trolls.
Yep.
Just don't feed the trolls because it doesn't help. And it actually, in my experience, to have your supporters come to your defense is a much more powerful
Sure.
strategy. And if it's such an outlier thing, people just blow it off anyway.
Right. I do like I do have like a bit of a bridging strategy for people that are doing this via social media. It's kind of related. Like if someone gets on social media or if someone's involved in a conversation with you in social media and there's a clear misalignment or disagreement, or maybe they critique what you're doing, but their critique isn't like aligned with what's really happening. The only way to engage with that person is privately and
Mhm.
professionally. So if you're going to reach out to them at all, don't do it like on the feed in front of everyone.
Yeah.
Go send them a direct message and be very professional in your direct message, because oftentimes trolls will screenshot. They'll screenshot your DM and they'll post it. So, be careful, because people think, they go to the DM to try and help that person because maybe they just didn't understand something. Maybe there's a way you can help them, but they let their professional guard down because they're in the private message, and that's not the way to do it. So if you're going to do it at all, do it privately, do it professionally, and don't take it personal. Okay. So we've got 10 minutes. Phil did ask a question that I do want to approach before we wrap. If anyone else has a question, please put it in the chat. Let me get to your question here, Phil. So have you ever launched a course and followed it up with a webinar-based take my course online with me or someone else you trust to teach it well? This would allow for students to benefit from being able to ask questions or learn from others' questions. Yes. So if the question is, have I ever done a webinar after a course or a live Q&A after a course? I actually build live Q&As into my course on a weekly or monthly basis, depending on the phase of the course. So just like a book, to me, every course has a life cycle. And when I first launch a course, for at least the first few months, and few meaning 6-ish, I have a weekly live Q&A. And there's a really good opportunity for you there, whether you're in a beta or not, whether this is just a straight up course launch or a beta, for you to interact with people that are attending your course on a weekly basis. Could be 1 week for 1 to 2 hours. I recommend 2 because one's almost never enough. and you spend time just talking with these people in your course about different concepts, different things. This is not a structured cohort style Q&A, right? That would be like, we meet this week to discuss this topic. It's part of the curriculum. That is not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is just doing a live Q&A where you can discuss those topics. Now, there are other times when you just provide people with access to your course and you don't have like that recurring open-ended Q&A type session, but you do have like a monthly or a quarterly webinar on a topic in the course that's open to the public or open to people in the course or both. And you can use that as an opportunity to establish trust, to expand on topics, to do all those things. I'm a big fan of all of it. To me,
Yeah.
the only thing with interaction that you have to determine is how much you can give people. That's my kind of golden rule when I coach course clients. It's that I want you to engage with people on whatever schedule and obligation works for both of you. So it's almost always that those people are willing to engage more than you can give. So you have to kind of rationalize that for yourself and say, what actually works for me in the business and the product and the relationship with the client, and then create your schedule around that. Now, let's say you're doing this before you actually have a lot of people in your course. Let's say you're using the webinar as a way to get people in your course. Then don't hold back in the webinar. I say, go to the webinar and deliver a message that's very clear. It's actionable. It's almost like a workshop type environment, and get people interested in your course by giving them value. Don't hold back on value.
Yeah. So let me speak to that too, because, Margie and I have been, and I'm just gonna be honest here. Margie and I have been talking about that because I think the only thing that I would say to that you have to be sensitive to, and School of Hard Knocks is a great teacher, is we tend to over deliver. We give too much. We give too much, and then what happens is the person, like, if you're using a webinar to promote your course, like, and as you know, our course is, I would say, robust, meaning there's a lot in there. But when Margie and I get on there, like, we dump the truck. Like, we just wanted to give so much value. And I saw a meme, not a meme, I don't know what it's called, or a story, reel, one of those words. And a particular person was saying, one of the things you have to remember is that if you overteach, you squelch desire. So
Absolutely.
you have to really balance it, I think, so that you're giving enough information to give value, but you're also creating a desire for more. And if you give too much, then I think people can get overwhelmed. So, Margie and I have been in the process of refining our webinar that we're doing to tell people about our course, because we did that. We gave too much and it was a little bit overwhelming. So we're actually scaling back.
Yeah. So the way I recommend doing that to my clients is that they pick a topic. You could have 15 topics in your course, but they're going to have a topic. And when you do a co-hosted webinar with someone like Honore and I have done webinars together where we each presented a topic, but it's one topic, and that's it. And we keep the slide count low. We keep the topic very focused and specific so that we don't open up the box and overwhelm people with too much information about too many topics. People can generally dive at an appreciable rate within one topic for a certain period of time, which, by the way, according to all the human performance technology experts that I had to work with when I was becoming a certified master training specialist, was about 45 minutes. They're like, dude, in about 45 minutes, your brain just kind of taps, right? It's like, I can't do this anymore. So you're speaking in a natural pace. You're delivering things in a logical order. You're not opening up the whole world of work, but what you're not doing is holding back from giving people something actionable. So oftentimes what people do is they dump, right? We just like a data dump. It's like, here's all this stuff and here's all these resources, and people just kind of feel like they need a day or two to process everything. Or in the inverse, you bring them right to the door, but you never actually open it for them. And then they feel let down.
Right.
So you're kind of best served by picking one thing you can promise to deliver, speaking very, very naturally and intelligently and kind of cleanly about that thing, and then letting the conversation exist around that thing for the remainder of the time that you have available. And there's nothing saying that you can't end the session a little early if people are out of questions. Another thing to think about is on almost all of these webinars, there is some type of follow-on action, like you had mentioned earlier, Karen, where you're trying to get people to do something. There's a call to action at the end. You need to set aside a certain amount of time for that. That could take up to 30 minutes, depending on how it's structured, especially if you're not like a really like, if you're not pushing it really aggressively, which I don't push things aggressively because, right. So if you take a kind of a softer, but a very clear approach to showing people this opportunity that's available to them, you're actually going to need to spend some time talking about that opportunity as well. So
Sure.
they're smart enough about it to take action. So, just stating that because now you have one lesson that you have to unpack enough that they are happy. And then you have a segment of the webinar, which is related to the call to action. And that's going to take time. And before you know it, it's been like, boom, an hour and a half has flown by. And you're like, does anyone have any questions? So that's why
like I might have mentioned, the School of Hard Knocks is a great teacher.
Yeah, it really is.
But to that, if you not doing anything, like if you get paralyzed and you don't do anything, then then you're kind of like you haven't made any progress. So I think the idea is fail forward. Like if you're going to do it, it's okay. It's okay to not do it perfectly the first time out the gate.
Absolutely. You should expect to not do it properly the first time. And by the way, I think you guys made the most beneficial of mistakes. No one's ever going to accuse you of not knowing what you're talking about or being the kind of person who doesn't provide value. So you guys, it is a problem, but it is also a better problem to have than if someone said, well, that was a complete waste of my time. Because you never recover from those. They never give you a second look, and you can't really clean that up either. So like I've seen in situations where I went to a webinar with a friend of mine who hosted a very, very informative, very popular topic. A lot of people showed up and tech destroyed them. Like they never really got off the ground. And I felt like, oh man, I know what that feels like. But they're able to clean that up, right? By going back to that email list that they have of those people and saying, hey, look, we owe you one. So we're going to rehost the webinar. And then here's something nice for you to make, to help you out. You can clean up messes that are good messes. It's kind of like when your kid's trying to make their own cereal.
Yeah.
I can only get so mad. I've been telling you to feed yourself for years.
And you finally Cheerios everywhere.
And you finally tried.
Right.
Okay, Tony Jacobson. Tony, how you doing, buddy? Tony's a regular here on the show, and he is a really, really great guy. So if you guys can connect with Tony, he's active on YouTube. He's active on the socials. He's great. Tony, feel free to drop your contact info or places that people can find you. Same with you, Phil. Put them all in the comments so people can see them. I'll put them up on the screen for you. He says it's much easier to put together a free class if you have your own frameworks built out appropriately. That's something I had to learn. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Did you experience that, Karen?
Yeah. I mean, well, and again, Margie and I, we're like everybody else. We're learning as we go. I mean, we're still learning. I mean, Margie and I, we've each been doing this 30 years. That's a lot of, and we, neither one of us are shy about talking. And so, you put that combination together, you get a lot. And so like everybody else, we're still trying to figure out, we're refining and, we're building and refining and growing and doing all those things. And I mean, that's the fun part. It's like, I don't ever want to get to the point where I go, oh, I arrived. I mean, that would be boring. Right. And so
you'll appreciate this. I was becoming an instructor, and the Coast Guard has when you become an instructor in the service, they put you through training, they put you through feedback, they put you through all these things. And then every course you teach, the students fill out critiques. And it's every week. Your job is critiqued by your students every week of the year that you're teaching. So it was kind of funny because the immediate feedback I got was, Petty Officer Marino is really smart. He really knows his stuff, but man, he talks fast.
Yeah, right? I might have had that on occasion.
So, I mean, it was amazing to me. Like you have a very defined curriculum. You have 1 hour to deliver this topic to your students. It's on the schedule. It's the military. We're like, it says it's an hour. It's going to be an hour. I don't care if you have to sit there for 5 minutes. It's going to take an hour. It's like we do an hour. And the students are prepared for that block of instruction. You're prepared to give it. But what ends up happening is you become the expert in your field. Your depth of knowledge is so deep that even though the curriculum says teach this thing, you could teach that thing for 2 weeks. And so you're like, I've got to get as much in this hour with these kids as possible. And so I had to learn how to calm myself down a little bit, because I was trying to give them everything I could, because we didn't have another opportunity to teach that topic in that class. The other thing is I come from like a fast talking, like, New York Italian family. You fight for every word you get.
Yep.
So you better make it count.
Yep. I grew up with a dad who was Irish Catholic from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And so I think that may have been where I cut my chops on that too.
Yeah. So we get that in our background. Okay. So here we go. There's Phil. Phil's awesome. Phil's a sales guru.
Oh,
Been there, done that. I love him. And Phil's been a connection through Brianna Henley. So for those that know Brianna and Phil are two little peas in a pod when it comes to business. And Phil's great. Phil is writing a book, at least one book right now, and he's developing courses. So he's on the battlefront right now.
yeah.
All right, Tony, you're next. You got to throw your stuff up there so I can share it. I can keep it open for another minute. So yeah, Karen, while we're closing out this last minute, you want to tell us a little bit about where people can find you, where they can learn about you, where they can get on that list you were talking about?
Sure. The easiest one to remember, because my name's Karen Anderson, is KarenAnderson.co. And the reason I have .co is the M was $95,000 to go for the .com. And I decided I didn't need the M that much. And so I took KarenAnderson.co. And if you go to KarenAnderson.co, there's a tab there if people are interested that says free ebooks. And yeah, I mean, I'd love people to look at the course, and I would love to give gifts because I love gift giving. But if you go there, free ebooks, there's a copy of the Bezos letters, 14 principles to grow your business like Amazon. That's free. A couple books that I wrote, a bunch of books I published, but there's some free ebooks there. If people want to grab one, they're more than welcome to.
Excellent. And are you active on any social media sites or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. I got tired of Twitter. And so
not hard to do.
Yeah, I just like, so yeah. And I'm either Karen Anderson or Dear Karen, because I used to have a column that I wrote many years ago, and it was kind of like Dear Abby, and it was Dear Karen, and it just stuck. So Dear Karen or KarenAnderson.co.
Excellent. Well, make sure you guys go check that out. Karen's course, Unleash the Power of Your Book, can be found on the EmpireBuildersMasterclass.com. Karen, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show this hour. Fun. We've been talking about this for a couple of months. I'm just glad that the opportunity came.
I'm so glad that it worked. And like I said, I love talking books and courses, and it's what I love to do. So
well, we'll have you back here soon.
Thank you.
I have a feeling that next month I'm going to have a run of shows where I'm a solo. So I'm going to try and drag all our best interviews in.
That would be fun.
for another round.
And I'm always happy. Like, shockingly, I'm always happy to talk. So
excellent. Well, keep your eye on your inbox. There'll be another invite out soon. All right, guys. Well, if you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe either here on the podcast platform of your choice or on YouTube. And we have this live event every Thursday on the schedule, and we meet at noon Eastern on those Thursdays. There is an exception. Next week, there will be no live stream because we will be in an event. Both Honore and I will be at the same event, so we will have no live show, but we will be releasing recorded interviews and episodes on our YouTube channel and on the podcast. So if you're listening on the podcast, there'll be no interruption. If you guys are watching this live, then make sure you check out our YouTube channel, and you can see uploaded videos there for Thursday. Karen, thank you so much for spending your time with us today, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the next episode.
Super. Thanks, Lucas. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks guys.